Alright, this is part 8, the last section, this essay by Stephen Clark called How to Believe in Fairies, mostly about W.B. Yeats's poetic metaphysics. The editor of Yeats's and Sturge Moore's correspondence seems to have taken it for granted that Yeats was philosophically naive, that Sturge Moore, as G.E. Moore's brother and defender against Yeats' criticisms, quote, had the greater philosophical bent, and was justified in laughing at Yeats's unscientific ways. Victoria Moore has a higher and more accurate view of Yeats's philosophical skills. My own view is that the long, confused, vitriolic, and often amusing debate between Yeats and Moore ended in victory for Yeats. G.E. Moore's argument for the reality of what was commonly perceived and known, does indeed imply that any shared and stable percept was just as real, just as much a something different from the mere perceiving of it as Berkeley had believed. Insofar as such empiricists insist upon the existence of hands, people, and past time, and deny or ignore the existence of fairies and the dream time, they betray a dogmatic ignorance. Idealists of Yeats's kind need not deny, as Sturge Moore imagined, that there are people and relations between people. The question is, what is it that people are? Neither Yeats nor Berkeley answered. Spiritual substances, as Sturge Moore supposed. Where they agreed was in saying that percepts, the more real, the more they are shared, i.e., the more they are the percepts of a wider mind than our individual being, could have their being only in the sea of experience. So where they agreed was in saying that percepts, the more real, the more they are shared, could have their being only in the sea of experience. Yeats explicitly endorsed Blake's aphorism that God only acts or is in existing beings or men. Whereas Berkeley, putting the same point the other way round, described God as that, quote, infinite, free spirit in whom we move and live and have our being. What percepts we encounter, what regions of the infinite realm of experience we visit, depends on the direction or character of our will. When Yeats spoke of, quote, Goldsmith and the Dean, Berkeley and Burke, as four great minds that hated Whiggery, and as four travelers on his ancestral stair, he identified Berkeley as, quote, God appointed Berkeley that proved all things a dream, that this pragmatical, preposterous pig of a world, its pharaoh that so solid seem, must vanish on the instant if the mind but change its theme, end quote. It is easy to conclude that Yeats must have misunderstood. Berkeley, after all, was adamant that all the common things of life were real and present only on his view of them, that it was the Lockean materialist who had turned the world of common day into a drifting illusion, that it was they who imagined that reality must be forever hypothetical. Berkeley also scorned those who neglected common duties and loyalties and preferred their private whims and fantasies to the good of the commonwealth. He was not caught away from the common sense and common goods to live in a fairyland. But if we remember that for Yeats, a dream was not absolute or constant unreality, and that, quote, the mind does not mean only the individual waking mind, we can understand and endorse his point. The unseen worlds of glory that surround us only wait for our eyes to open. The believer may expect, a quote from a quote of Berkeley's, a happiness large as our desires, and those desires not stinted to yea few objects we at present receive from some dull inlets of perception, but proportionate to our faculties shall be one shall be what God has given the finishing stroke to our natures, and made us fit inhabitants for heaven. Some typos there, I'm not sure if that's quite accurate, but that's the end of the block quote from Berkeley. Newman described his own childhood views as follows, quote, I thought life might be a dream, or I an angel, and all this world a deception. My fellow angels, by a playful device, concealing themselves from me and deceiving me with the semblance of a material world. End quote. Newman was wrong on Berkeleyan and Yeatsian terms, only in thinking that there might have been a material world, even if there was actually none. Insofar as the concept material has any real content, it is indubitable that many things are material, but also clear to any exact analysis that such materiality is an element unabstractable from the realm of experience. If fairies are regularly, even if eccentrically seen, then fairies are, on Berkeleyan terms, as real as any other ideas. The only serious question is whether the percepts encountered in visionary trance are signals to us of other spirits, other centers of experience within the infinite and eternal. The evidence of such spirits, where we ordinarily expect them, that is, in our fellow human beings and fellow animals, is that we can understand the percepts. They can be to us the words of a perceptual language, such that what is present to another spirit is also present to us. It is in the possibility of awakening or echoing that other spirit in our spirit that we come to believe in that other's reality in itself. If we see fairies, we can believe in them as ideas or objects. If we can momentarily or more lastingly awaken the fairy spirit in us, and feel it to be at once a solid and an alien presence, we may conclude that fairies are also real as the spirits that Yeats supposed them. So to conclude, fairies are not pygmies, not Lilliputians, nor even biological organisms from another planet. Fairy is a term that has its place in an idealist metaphysic. To believe in fairies is to acknowledge, and even to make real to oneself, the intermittent presence of spirits that enter our ordinary consciousness as moods of love or alienation, wild joy or anger. They may be invoked by music, poetry, and love, and what they do once here may not be quite what their votaries desired. To doubt or disprove their existence, it is necessary to do more than dredge Loch Ness, or dig up every haunted mound. The argument is a metaphysical one, about the proper description of our experience and the correct metaphysical guess about the ground of that experience. If there are mermaids, it is not because there are manatees, but because that is an appropriate metaphorical description of certain states of spiritual being. If a broadly spiritist metaphysics is ultimately found to be false, then there have never really been any fairies. But in that case, there have never really been any human persons either. If there are persons, then there are at least some spirits weirdly mingled with the material. And if there are some, what reason is there to deny that there also are others, perhaps of larger and more alien kind? End of essay.